Shana Tova and good Yantif to everyone.
Shana Tova.
So in thinking about this morning and thinking of our family service and where we are, I have a wonderful, that I think is a wonderful story this morning. It's called The Scratch and the Gem. And it was adapted by a colleague of ours, Rabbi Max Weiss. And one story that I think is really fitting with the moment that we're in. So you're listening? You're here? Okay, I just want to make sure. So where this story is incredible because it talks about a ruler. Once there was this wonderful, incredible ruler who led their land with justice and patience and kindness and compassion. In their land, things got done. Roads were tended to, people had enough to eat, and people knew they could count on their ruler to help them take care of their needs. But the ruler had a secret. Being in charge was hard work. They were always second-guessing themselves. They were not always sure they were making the right decision. They knew that being just a ruler meant that some people would not be happy. Sometimes when the ruler was having a particularly hard time making a decision, trying to figure out what to do, they would go to their private room, open the bottom drawer of their dresser, reach way to the back, and pull out a beautiful velvet box. Inside the box was a little velvet bag. Inside the bag was a blue gemstone, about half the size of the ruler's hand. They would take that gem, sit in their favorite chair, and look deeply into its facets, its faces, turning it back and forth so that it caught the light and reflected images of the land back to the ruler's eye. The ruler used the gem to calm and clear their mind and allow them to focus on the problems that they had to address. After one particularly long and hard day spent discussing money and a building project, the ruler reached into the drawer, opened the box, took out the velvet bag, and as they were opening the drawstrings on the bag, the beautiful gem slipped out and fell on the flagstone floor. The ruler was aghast. When they picked the gem up off the floor, there was a huge scratch across the largest face of the jewel. The ruler cradled the jewel in their hand, went to their favorite chair, and stared at the jewel, trying to empty their mind as they had in the past. But all they could see was a scratch, not the reflections, not the light. There was no clearing of their mind, just a scratch. That night, the ruler couldn't sleep. All they could think about was their ruined gem. The next day, when people came to their beloved ruler with problems to solve, the ruler could not help. They could not focus. They were overwhelmed. This went on for days, and once orderly land began to have some problems with things not getting done as they should. Finally, the ruler began to talk about the problem and shared the secret of the gem. The ruler's assistant put out a call across the land to see if anyone could help. One by one, the greatest gem cutters from all across the land came to help their beloved ruler, and one by one, they left with their heads hanging low in sadness. They all said the scratch was way too deep and that nothing could be done. One day, as the ruler became sadder and the land became more chaotic, an artist came by and asked if they could help. The ruler's assistant was doubtful. After all, the greatest gem cutters in the land said nothing could be done. But the assistant gave the artist a stone anyway. What did they have to lose? The artists locked themselves away in a room for 3 days, asking for only food and water. On the third day, they came out and presented the ruler with the blue stone. The ruler took the stone to their favorite chair, turned it this way and that. Its facets reflected sparkles of light around the room and into the ruler's eyes. And slowly, for the first time in weeks, a smile spread across the ruler's face. Astounded, the ruler's assistant asked to see the stone. The scratch was still there, but around the scratch, the artist had cut leaves and petals. Where once there was only a scratch, there was now a beautiful flower reflecting light. The ruler's assistant thanked the artist and asked how they made this miracle. And the artist said, "It is no miracle. Sometimes things we think are flaws can be transformed into things of beauty. The scratch could just be a scratch, or it could be part of something beautiful. The same is true for people. Things we think are flaws or wounds can sometimes be transformed into things of radiant beauty." This is one of the central messages of Yom Kippur. So with the people you came in with today, and if you didn't come in with anyone, maybe you can turn around or sideways or back or forth. Our youth choir can turn to some. I'm going to ask you for a few moments, just a few moments. And those who are with us in our virtual community, I'm going to ask you in your homes to gather as well. Share something this past year that was flawed in your life, something that was flawed, but that you figured out how to work with or through. That flaw can be like the stone, or it can be a flawed situation, or a person that perhaps challenges you. How did you find a positive outcome to that situation? So spend a minute or two. You have permission. Go ahead.
Trying to be empathetic and sympathetic, but I also had to be direct about what I wasn't happy with, and we came up with some approaches that she could take to improve. So that's only a few weeks ago, so she's doing fine. So hopefully it'll continue. It's hard to know. Yeah. That's the one that comes to my mind most recently. Yeah.
I'll offer about 30 more seconds.
30 seconds.
Yeah, so our band had a really, really bad rehearsal, and I was not
didn't learn the national anthem.
Yeah, and I laid into them at the end of rehearsal, really hard, harder than I needed to, and so the next day I called everyone over and I apologized because I laid in way harder than I needed to, and so people were feeling down because I've had bad rehearsals, so I knew how it was to have just people lay into you at the end of a bad rehearsal. And so I said, I'm sorry for the way that I acted last night, because it was overly cruel and overly harsh.
Appreciate that?
They did. They went out and we had one of the most productive and focused rehearsals we've had. So then I thanked them after.
Okay, as we come together, I am hopeful. Some of our youth choirs said it would take them a day to get through all the flaws and that it would take a little time. I'm sure, much like some of them, including myself, probably 2 minutes isn't enough to even scratch, no pun intended, Rabbi Gimbel, the surface of this moment. But I think that throughout the day, perhaps you can stir with that idea. What is it like? What do the flaws look like in the places that you want to create the beauty around? When we partake in a mitzvah and a commandment, the idea of the commandment, yes, is to do it and to act upon it, but actually, the rabbis tell us that if we do a chidur mitzvah, we beautify the mitzvah, if we extend it. So how do we take those flaws, those pieces of our lives, the people perhaps around us that may challenge who we are in us and activate something within us? How do we transcend those moments? And how do we create the beauty around the flaw? And so I leave that for you on this Yom Kippur morning to perhaps be in your head as you go through the day today. So we are beginning with the Seder Kriyat Torah this morning on page 255. As we prepare ourselves, I invite you, if you are able, to please rise.